Hey!
What's up?
Hola.
Today we're going to talk about, hey Ron, step forward a little bit here so people can see you. Come on up here right in front. Come with Ron. Today we're going to talk about boomers!
Hey!
Boomers! Yeah, so you're in the hot seat today, Ron Eastwood.
Boom, there it
Our
is.
resident boomer. By the way, don't forget,
Yeah,
of
that's
course,
me.
comment, like, share. We want to see what you have to say. We want to communicate with you during this. You are
Yes.
sitting in the chair that's like right here.
Eso,
Yeah, it's like your
exactly.
chair. Sorry, I got to comb my hair. So today is a kind of a spicy one because we know we got a lot of boomers hanging with us right now.
Oh, man.
And I want to know what you think of this. Janelle wants to know what you think of this.
I do. I'll be courageous. Yeah, like, you know.
I'm curious too.
And watch this one. He tries to like smack me in the back of the head or something. So, hey,
Calm down.
an article from Christianity Today called Boomers, Take It From Woody and Iron Man, It's Time to Pass the Torch. So here's what it says. Dear baby boomers, if there were ever a time to pay attention to what's coming out of Hollywood, it would be now. From superhero flicks to kids' movie reboots, many of the summer blockbusters of 2019 are voicing deep longing to learn from the wisdom of previous generations. Even, I won't do spoilers, but they even are like symbolic passing of torches to a new generation. In the Marvel Universe, it's to a new generation of heroes. And so the immediate backdrop of this, by the way, is the public maligning boomers. In particular, that they have recently faced. Some have gone as far as to say that boomers have, quote, ruined everything.
Wow.
I didn't say this.
Whoa.
For younger Americans. To credit, certain boomers have responded by apologizing for the world they've handed to younger generations.
Whoa.
I'm reading. It's not me. As a newly 40 card-carrying member of Generation X, I found myself somewhere in the middle, a generational interloper between the graying boomers and hipster millennials and members of Gen Z. I feel that very much. Basically a millennial, but okay, I'm an extra.
Yes.
All that to say here, if any of you are paying attention to political news, there was a Democratic debate recently where Joe Biden was challenged by one of the younger candidates for the Democratic ticket that he said 30 years ago he was calling to pass a torch for the younger generation.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
His response, I'm still holding on to that torch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which many people would go, it's exactly what we're talking about, boomers.
Yeah.
So this resistance to cross-generational collaboration is not simply a political matter. They say it has profound ramifications for our churches. Multiple generations of Christians have grown up without the elders and mentors that previous generations had before them. And why is that? As one boomer once was quoted to say, quote, because, I hate to say it, my generation of boomers is not discipling the next generation as well as previous generations did for us.
First of all, I'm sure an extra wrote that. Is that fair to say that the generation before you did a better job at mentoring? Because we're assuming that. Or maybe is that a thing that older people are just, the older generation at whatever time are not mentoring?
Yeah, in my own personal life, I didn't have a mentor. I never sought a mentor as an introvert. It's not my nature. I tried to mentor a couple times and it was just awkward, again, mostly because I'm an introvert. And, but maybe there is some truth to that.
Yeah.
You're so generous.
I heard a statistic that 10 years ago the average senior pastor was 45 years old. Now the average senior pastor is 55 years old.
Oh, wow.
So it almost seems like none of them are stepping down. But then you think, well, 55, why would you step down then?
Yeah,
if you're
that's
a senior
right.
pastor.
By the way, hello, Robert. Good to see you again, my friend.
Hey.
Satin's here. Mike.
What's up, Satin?
I got to say this, though, Ron.
Hi, Myrna. She got here early.
Wow,
Yeah,
Myrna.
girl. Earlier than yesterday.
Well played, Myrna. Now, one of the points of this, which I think may have some truth, and I'd love your reaction, Ron, is it not one of the distinguishing characteristics of boomers in general that they have a hard time letting go? Culture is changing. Many people have said we live in a post-Christian nation. Seems like the one group that is refusing to admit it, not you,
Yeah.
generally boomers. You got people who want to have promotions. So boomers seem to be unwilling to let go of leadership in church, let go of anything. It's the, I'm still holding the torch, sit down.
Yeah.
Do you sense any of that internally?
Not really, but I can see that. You know, not myself. I probably have it and I don't see it, but I do see it in others that the whole kids these days kind of mentality that you and your first it was your Mario Brothers and Mario Kart, and then
Which is so dated.
yeah, you and your Minecraft, you and your it's going to turn your brains to mush. But yeah, we do hold on to our ideal of what was right. But I guess there's a lot of that, because I'll listen to music of the 60s and 70s and think those were the classic oldies.
Oldie stations
And-
don't play 60s anymore.
And then, the next
They're playing
kids that
new
were
music like the
10 years
90s.
They're
younger
playing
than
my
me.
music.
Right. You go back and you go, that was good music, the 80s and 90s, and then the next will be the 90s and 2000s. So we all kind of have our idealistic view of what was good and what was right.
Well, boomers would make up the generation of those really in positions of power at this point, right? I mean, we're starting to get the Xers in there, but boomers are
Yeah.
still in their 50s and 60s.
Right, on up.
Yeah.
And your boards of directors are boomers, and
And so,
yeah, that's
isn't there this kind of... Because I think Kathy brought up something here I want to raise, but there's... Like, you're not noticing that things are changing around you, and it's not all bad change.
Yeah.
It's like you're pointing at everybody. And I hate using generalities like this, but I get a sense
go ahead.
sometimes from the boomer generation that they're blaming everybody else for society's problems, but they refuse to hold any mirror up to see any contribution they're making. I'm not saying they're the cause of all the problems, but it's like, can we share the load here and stop pointing fingers?
yeah.
You're like what, Brian?
Yeah, if we had ever made any mistakes, we'd be glad to share the blame.
Whoa. Now, Kathy said something up here. Can you scroll up a little bit, Janelle? So, Kathy said, the problem is society is at odds with Christian values, and it's hard to mentor someone who rejects your values. I understand what she's saying, and I think that's a common thought for boomers, right?
Yeah, there's been a definite shift in sensibilities where the elders, if you call them that, the greatest generation, like they call themselves, and the boomers, we grew up in a society where Christianity was the norm. Even if you didn't practice, you considered yourself a Christian. You followed basic Christian lifestyle tenets, at least in public, and more and more we've slipped out of that to where you can be anything, do anything. You've got a right to live your lifestyle, and every day's Woodstock.
Well, and I think there's this too where I remember going to an event, and obviously I was the youngest person there, and I would say everyone else was a boomer, and they were shocked to be like, wow, you're like solid in your Christian faith. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of young people who do share the same values, but I think part of it is not taking the time to actually get to know the younger generation, because there's just like negative connotations with younger generations.
Well, yeah, and one of my questions with that is, why do boomers get to be the ones that get to define Christian values?
Yeah.
Because the Bible's
Yeah.
full of a long list of Christian values. Like, for example, we are to defend the oppressed. We're supposed to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. We're supposed to love and treasure God's creation and care for it.
Yeah.
Things that are considered not priorities, but why do boomers get to set the Christian priorities and everyone else has to be subject to it and wrong if they don't agree?
Well, Sherry's point may shed
You're in a
light.
tough spot.
Yeah.
Shed
No,
light
Oh,
to
that's
that.
cool.
She's saying, I'm on the tail end of boomers. I think part of the holding on is just a characteristic of the quote-unquote older generation. I can remember as a kid that the quote old people said some of the same types of things. Boomers should take this opportunity to be mentoring those coming up so they are ready to take the reins. Don't
Yes,
you
we
think
should.
that's part? I mean, it's always been a thing.
Well, yeah, I think it's always been a thing, but if the prevailing attitude is I'm not letting go of my torch, it's more of a I'm afraid you're going to take my job or my position or my authority, so I'm not even going to think about preparing you for it. I'm going to
you
hold
see
on to
that-
it as long as I'm still alive. Pride from my cold dead hands, as you joked before.
Yeah.
You see that in the church a lot, and it debilitates churches, not even with just pastors retiring. I've seen it even with way before the pastor retires, preparing the older teens to take on it's older teens and young adults, like people in their 20s, to take on some responsibilities so that they slowly grow in leadership for not fear, but this whole thing of y'all don't know how to do it, or we do it the way it's always been done, and and not including the newer thoughts because of what you said of thinking they're not doing it right. But the other thing I was going to ask you a question, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, to your point, one of the things I've learned from millennials, I mean, I'm basically one, but I've learned from the younger millennials.
40.
When I sat and talked to
Very
them,
much an Xer.
they've quite literally opened my eyes to the fact that I've seen some things incorrectly. I viewed faith and Christian life and Christian values in a very small box, where I've zeroed in on only just a couple of priorities. They've made me step back a little bit and go, okay, it's not unbiblical for you to value this and have me value this. You're not wrong. We're both right, and we have different priorities.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing that necessarily willingness to accept new interpretation and change. I'm not saying changing biblical truth. Please hear me correctly. I'm not saying biblical truth. But I think emphasis on certain biblical principles seems to be like, for example, I heard a professor once say, the biggest difference between liberal and conservative Christians are the verses we choose to ignore.
Yeah.
I think perhaps the
Exactly.
biggest difference between millennial Xers and boomer Christians are the verses we choose to ignore. Boomers are going, why don't you all care more about sexuality and abortion? And the younger people are saying, why don't you care more about
the poor.
loving your neighbor and
Right.
the poor and injustice in society
But
and the
that's
immigrant?
why, and I like the way my church does it, where you need everybody.
Yeah.
You need
Yeah.
everybody to get the full picture. And
So let
not
go
to get
a little bit.
no, but then that brings in, maybe it's not completely let go. For example, just change positions where they can let go of the torch of leadership and maybe stay around for mentorship. Like, how do you lead and questions, and can I come to you when it's like we're stuck? What do we do in this situation? It's not retire and go sit down. We still need the wisdom.
We need you.
Yeah, we need them.
So, okay, I want to get specific here because what typically happens, Ron is not like this, but people get defensive in this. And I get it. This is a pretty aggressive article.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, boomers, take it from Woody and Iron Man. It's time to pass the torch. It's pretty
You
aggressive.
losers.
Yeah, right. Right. That's the attitude
Yeah.
of it.
Right.
And I'm seeing a lot of people justify what's going on. But here's what I'd like to know. I hear a lot of self-reflection from millennials in particular. They're saying, here's what we're doing wrong, here's what we need. Okay. Boomers, where are your areas of improvement? Where are you missing it? You're saying about how you have life experience. Rod, you're right. You have lots of life experience. No
Yeah.
question about it. Kathy was talking about something. Very good. So what do you need to work on, boomers? Put on the humility hat and tell us. What are you working on as a generation that you could do better? And I'm going to wait right here.
And you keep waiting.
Boomers, we need you. Somebody texted in with a different take saying, I had a mentor, a good one, and many of the younger people don't want real mentorship. That's true.
It depends on who
Oh.
you well, if
But
you want
I-
to sit down and listen
yeah.
and you tell us what to do, that's not mentorship.
No, and the thing
Really?
is, I've had so many good mentors, but I was the one who sought them out. It wasn't the other way around of people coming to me saying that
Right.
they would love to take the opportunity to get to know me. I had to go out of my way to do so.
But it doesn't
So-
have to be that way.
No.
It doesn't have to
It
be
doesn't
that
have
way.
to.
I'm curious on what the torch is. Like, if if you're asking me to give up my employment, I can't do that. I spent so many years working, especially in Christian radio, working for $5 an hour, $8 an hour, whatever, that I cannot physically afford to retire, or I'd be homeless shortly. So that's one of the things that drives me on. I cannot pass that torch along. If you want that seat over there, you're gonna have to fight me for it.
Well, but there's plenty of truth in that, because you're still in your earning years. In fact, it's your peak earning years that are necessary for investment and retirement and such. I get that.
Yeah, the investment should be happening.
Yeah, but then we also see
whole
it in
time.
media, like, goodness gracious, some people need to let it go. Like, there are positions where it's like, yeah.
Yeah, but okay, so what torch? It's not quit your job and become a homeless person so we can do something. The torch I would interpret as influence, positional authority, and those require humility on the part of the person appointing it. So
So
if
what
you
does
are
it look like?
quite frankly, it ties to my first question. It's what are boomers working on? What is the areas of weakness in your generation that you're looking to leadership from the next group to come up to help you with? That's an area of humility. That's the torch.
Okay,
So it's
give me
saying,
an example. Like, what does that look like?
well, I'm still trying to get boomers to tell me what they're working on. And all I'm hearing
And
is
Janet
nothing.
agrees. Janet says, what torch are we talking about?
But that's the attitude, to be honest, that frustrates the younger
Boomers,
people.
we need you to help Brian. What things are you working on? That's the question.
Yeah, like millennials have helped me as an Xer. Millennials have helped me value authenticity and transparency. I didn't value it until I heard them do it, and I said, wow, this has tremendous spiritual truth and value to it. It's part of sharing God's story, sharing my story. I'm going to do that better because of millennials. It's made me better. I'm not here, and I hate to be harsh, I am not hearing that same attitude from boomers.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing you guys say, we need the younger generation because you're bringing these values to us, and it's making us better. That's the torch.
Hi,
Okay.
Shannon, Angie, Wendy, Diane. Hi, Satin. And we need help to know what are boomers working on.
Look at this. No one is. Yeah.
I think one thing, and I don't know if it's something that we're working on or if it's just the difference, but boomers and the previous generation were very active. We do things. Younger generations are very reflective. The other day I was at my brother's house, and my niece posts a ton of stuff, and a lot of it is, the earth is in trouble, you need to, recycle and use solar energy and all these kind of things. And I had a can I was going to throw away. I said, do you have a recycling bin? And they said, no, we don't. And I'm like, with all the stuff you post, and you can't take the one tiny little step of putting a recycling can out, and I see so much of that. They're what's called slacktivists. You'll be active in a way that costs you nothing. Share a post, comment. Not even comment, even just like it. It costs you nothing, and I think that our generation was more get out and do it. If you don't get the job you want right away, you're going to take a job at McDonald's and maybe take a job at Burger King on off hours so that you're making money to take care of your family. You're not going to go to Starbucks and blog about how you can't get a job and you deserve it because you went to a college and paid $100,000.
But I think you bring up a decent point there about where there could be a reciprocal relationship, where you're saying one of the strengths of the boomer generation is action, and I would totally agree with that. I mean, when you look at history, you guys were getting it done. And you're getting out there and you're working hard. And I would see, though, the reflective nature of younger generations as also a value. Like there's value in reflection.
Yeah.
Be slow to speak, slow to get angry, quick to listen. That's reflection in itself. And so couldn't the boomer learn from the younger generation reflection and then teach the younger generation action? Wouldn't there be a way to show mutual value?
I would hope, yeah.
But sometimes I think it might come across as, why don't you guys do anything?
Right.
We need your help.
And maybe
Show us
that's
how.
where it comes, the attitude of, I don't want to hear from you, because it's condescending.
It's condescending. Yes, it's
Or is it-
condescending to say, you guys care about all the wrong things. All you do
Yeah.
is just.
Or is it, you don't want to work unless you're in charge?
Yeah.
No, that's a
Oh.
flaw. I think that is a flaw. Particularly, I'm going to point at, because I'm an ex of millennials. I'm pointing at Kelly. You all think you can graduate college and somehow be running the company? Sit down and
Oh, no.
and pass out the mail, okay?
I learned that very fast. That does not work that way.
But that is a generational flaw. You think
It
a
is a
degree equals a
generational
position.
flaw.
And it's
Yeah.
not the case. You've got to work for
100%.
it.
Mike
Okay.
says, Brian, so what do you think we should be working on? What do you think? You're asking the boomers, and we're not getting
You can't
an
do
answer.
self-reflection, can you?
Oh, come on, guys.
Not really. It takes a while. We have to take some time to think.
Rod said, I have lots of valued insights to hand down, and I'm wanting to do so, but have yet to meet younger generations inquiring of me for my acquired wisdom.
That's another thing that I think it's a little condescending attitude, and I'm generalizing.
Not you, Rod.
But why we hear people like Kelly saying she has to reach out, and then this comment of like, I don't see people coming for my wisdom. I have had older people in my life that have come and approached me. Like, why does it have to be like, well, y'all ain't coming? You don't
Yeah.
like. You don't. You're not bothered with that attitude, or maybe
no, I
it's
am.
a fear of being rejected. Maybe that's why
See,
there's that attitude.
The mentors I've had, it's a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
I have submitted to their experience and wisdom, but I watch as they not only seek my input on things, but respond to it and take action. Like when I was one of my first radio mentors, we did this a ton. Like he was pouring into me, I was eating it up, calling him my mentor. But he would come to me and go, "Hey, I don't understand what's going on here." I'd bring it up to him and go, "Will you run with that? I don't know how to do that."
Yeah.
And he'd give, you see, so it has to be reciprocal. It is not you're my mentor, please lecture me now about how dumb I am
Yeah.
or how much you know.
Or how much help you feel I need, or
There is a reciprocal nature to a mentorship relationship.
and
Right.
even little things like what made the difference for me. I reached out first. I get it. You got to ask for help, but little messages like, okay, let's make sure we set the next appointment, or how are you doing? Do
Yeah.
you want to meet up? It makes us feel like, okay, you want to help.
Yeah.
You know, and like you said, it's reciprocal.
Well, and I think one thing too, that when I had mentors, the majority of them said, look, let me pray about it first, because I want to make sure that I'm the person who speaks into your life.
Yeah.
Like taking that time and saying, like, I want to make sure I'm the right mentor for you. And I think that's reasonable to say.
Sherry in the house. Good morning, first of all.
Sherry, throwing it down.
Awesome. She
Throwing
says,
it
I
up.
think the key for boomers is to be willing to say they have made a mistake. I think you've said that in the past week. That's one of the things we're going to help y'all, since you don't want to tell us what you got to work on. They got to work. Authenticity. My mother, well, let me not get personal. She didn't struggle with this, but it's not personal.
Look at you digging out of your
hole.
hole. She's out of the hole. Mom, she loves you. Somebody else's mom.
As a generation, the lack of transparency has been a thing. But Sherry goes on to say, it is vital that we have more of the older women working with younger women, as stated in the Bible. And when you have those conversations in times of knowing one another, it will be brought to light the mistakes that boomers have made. Just one example. When I was having my babies, a lot of boomer women just telling me how I was messing up and how I could have done better. And I would go home crushed, because I already felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And so to feel like, oh my gosh, and I'm messing up, and it could be little things like, you shouldn't have that baby out here. That's like, I know it's a sense of like, I want to help, but instead to say, like, to share from brokenness and to share from like, man, when I had my first baby, I struggled, or I felt so overwhelmed too, or do you see what I'm saying? There's a little
Unless they
tone. Please.
Well, hey, I mean, because I agree with your assessment. Unless everybody had it all figured out, that would be helpful. But okay, how about this one? I think boomers were righteous and correct in their valuing of sexual purity in the raising their kids in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s.
Yes.
You were right to value that.
Yes.
And you've done it better than most.
Yeah.
You were wrong to shame people into sexual purity.
Was it them though?
Is their generation in the 80s and 90s in the
It
church.
was.
Yeah.
Raising up is boomers. My parents are boomers, raising Xers and young millennials. You were wrong to shame people into purity. And that's okay to say that. I think you had the right intentions, and we're learning from you.
Yeah.
But why is it controversial to say that? Like everybody's like, Brian, how dare you say that?
Well, because now
The
we're
purity
sounding like
culture was-
y'all are messing up and y'all did this
Yeah,
and y'all did that.
It would have been the older than me, but it was still, because boomers, I was just thinking in my head, 73 years old to 54 years old now. So that's us. And at 57, I'm kind of at the tail end of the boom.
Yeah.
Trying to be an Xer. But do you follow,
Basically an Xer.
do you follow what I'm saying though? It's
Basically.
That's I think what younger generations are looking for. You guys not saying, you know, you all are screwing up culture now. It's going, look, we had these standards, but I understand why you're reacting this way because here's what we did wrong.
Yes.
Let's work on this together.
Mike says we also failed a lot in that area. I think he's an Xer. I mean, you got the Josh Harris. We failed.
Oh yeah.
Yvonne says, with my grandchildren, I'm learning to be authentic and vulnerable about life and have reached out to others like I was mentored. Some younger people don't like to listen to.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
very true.
Well,
It is
because
true.
I think one of the faults in younger people is that they don't want to ever take action. They just want to talk.
Yeah.
And that's where you got to
Yeah.
just shut up and listen to a boomer at that point.
Yeah.
At some point, you do take action. But that, what Yvonne said is exactly what I'm talking about. Do you know how much younger generations value that from a boomer saying, man, you obviously need authenticity and vulnerability. I'm working on that. Good
Means
idea.
a lot.
Yeah.
Instead of you go, just keep screwing up.
Jennifer says, I think too, sometimes the bearer of wisdom and the attitude with which it is offered turns people off.
Jennifer.
And I think
It's
it's
true.
just that sharing from brokenness.
True.
You know, because you have wisdom to offer, but also saying, man, I learned it this way. A lot of times we learn it through our mistakes.
Josh Villa just joined.
Oh,
Might I add,
Everybody.
Station
Hola.
manager at Moody Radio Cleveland. Might I add, I love my job. And boy, this is a comfortable chair. Sure, it's great to be here at Moody Radio. Wouldn't you say, Janelle?
It is awesome.
Great.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Now's the time when you post all of your comments about how much you love us. Go ahead.
Linda says this dynamic has happened with every generation. The older don't want to hear, the younger don't want to listen.
That's true. So why don't the boomers be the courageous ones and change the trend?
Ooh.
I believe in you, boomers. You've accomplished so much. I think we secretly are jealous of some of the causes you were able to get behind
Could be.
and some of the changes you were able to champion in American culture and society. My dad's a boomer, and he was a generation of men who were drafted for Vietnam.
Yeah.
What a horrible thing that generation went through, and how you endured that, and you righted
Yeah.
wrongs, exposed government corruption.
Yeah.
We had the split within our generation, even of those who volunteered to go to service or were drafted and went to service, and idealistic people who were not in the service. And when the servicemen came back, they'd get spit on by their own countrymen, and
Horrible.
it was just a lot of bad stuff that went on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some results from that even today. And you start to learn about the hierarchy, the upper echelon, and the decisions they were making that weren't necessarily strategically to win the war, but were for other reasons.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but maybe that it was advantageous to keep the war going.
Yeah, and you know, I still remember, Ron, in the late 80s, early 90s, visiting Washington, D.C. with my family, and there was a couple of Vietnam War vets with a little display. I think we were in front of the Lincoln Memorial, not far from the Vietnam Memorial. And my dad started pointing at a place in Thailand where he was stationed.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy walked over, asked him, "Are you a vet?" And my dad said yes, and he said, "Welcome home."
Yeah.
And I later I was like, "Dad, what was that? Welcome home? What's that about?" And my dad explained to me that nobody in the generation was welcomed home.
Yeah.
And so, do you see, like, I get some of the baggage. It makes sense. We don't have to deal with that. Can you imagine having to go live overseas for a year and fight for a war you don't really believe in and come home and have people spitting on you?
Yeah.
But even a lot of your generation went to Iran or Iraq and similar, came home and were called baby killers or,
Yeah.
you know, whatever.
But, I mean, you're trying to be fair. But I would say nothing to the degree at which those in the 70s,
Yeah,
went, 60s and
Yeah.
70s went through it.
This is coming up a lot. Fun Size Thompson says a younger generation.
That's a great name.
That is
That's a
awesome.
great name.
He says, or she, you do have people from the younger generation that won't accept mentoring because of the fear of being judged. And so my question, Brian, since you're doing a great job analyzing boomers, what can we own about this? Because sometimes, for example, somebody can say, so you're sitting waiting for the torch to be passed. Are we stepping up? Are we...
What I can say is,
Are we preparing to be ready to take it on?
well, time and again, I go back to a piece of advice I got from a professor. I think I even said it yesterday here.
Yeah.
I told it to my kids yesterday. It was transformative. All you can do is change yourself. We are wasting a lot of time trying to force other generations and other people to change in the way we want them to be. All we can do is change ourselves. So you're absolutely right. We can, as Xers, old Xers and young Xers,
No, yeah.
we can.
6 months really makes a
Exactly.
difference there.
I mean, you've been an
Whoa.
Xer way longer than me, comparatively
Exactly.
speaking. All we can do is try to figure out what can we do to improve as a generation to try to make things better for the next one. And I think it is somewhat stop our whining and start stepping up. Start pressing for authority and influence. Explain clearly and gently and respectfully to boomers why they don't need to leave. They just need to invite us in to with them.
Yeah.
And we need to we have some changes we can make because we can't change them.
And
And boomers, I hope you take the advice and change yourself.
Hello. And in terms of ways it applies that I've seen, for example, with the Nevilles, the planning of reunions. It took the boomers a little bit to just be like, okay, y'all take care of it. But it was almost like an invitation, like, yo, we got this. You guys get to sit down and just walk in.
Right.
The same with big meals like Thanksgiving and all of that. It took a while to get Len's mom to be like, okay, I'm going to go over someone's house, or I'm going to let y'all cook and just sit back. But if we, maybe in our tone, whether it's at church with leadership, giving them the comfort that we can do it. Like, we got this. And I think we can own that with being faithful with the leadership.
By the way,
positions.
our friend Fun Size is actually our friend Chanel, who won Terrible Joke Tuesday.
Woo! Kathy, why do we have to pass the torch? Why can't we work together as a team?
But I think if you depends on how you look at the torch, though. When you look at lighting the Olympic flame, it's a series of people who run from Olympia all the way to wherever, passing the torch. It is a team effort. But you can't, like, one person can't run from Olympia all the way to Tokyo.
But isn't the article saying, though, it's each person represents a generation, and it's time for your generation or my
Some respects,
generation to give it over completely to you. We can't both hold the torch and run together.
And that's where I disagree with the analogy. That's where it breaks down to me.
Okay.
I don't think it's an issue of boomers get out of the way.
Right.
I think it's boomers welcome us to the party as an equal.
Party
as somebody
of what?
screwing up America.
Leadership?
Yeah,
Yeah.
influence, leadership,
I agree with that.
decision making. Because what it feels like is it's the Olympic torch, and you guys are just running around elbowing us out of the way sometimes. Get out of here! It's my torch. That's dramatic. It doesn't really feel that way all the time. But here's what I think is really telling. Okay. I think if people shared this post and asked, what do millennials need to work on? We'd get a long list of things.
Whoa.
If somebody said, what do extras need to work
Yes.
on? We'd get a long
Oh.
list of things.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anybody able to articulate with any level of
Dude.
transparency anything a boomer needs to
And
work
we
on.
have proof
Right.
because we just recently talked about millennials, and I saw the comments. There were all kinds of boomers talking about
So
how
what
they
does
got
it
to work
say?
on
What
it.
does it say about a generation when we ask, what do you need to work on? And nobody has an answer.
Yeah, we
Rod-
must be arrived already.
Rod says 60s and 70s were decades that were filled with social strife. Will Xers and millennials learn from us boomers when facing this new wave of social upheaval? That's a great point. We are at a time where maybe we can learn from them. Janet says, you want us to hand this mysterious torch to you. All you got to do is just take it. Good grief! You want that handheld, that handed.
Well said. That's funny.
That's funny.
Wow, that was awesome.
But I still can't emphasize enough. Let it sink in. We are unable to do self-analysis. That should be a little troubling. I think it should be very troubling to a generation of people that when someone legitimately asks you, what do you need to work on as your age demographic, and no one can answer the question with anything but getting defensive.
And
I think you've answered your own question, by the way.
Wow,
can't
Brian,
believe
calm down.
Oh, it's like
I'm
drop
having
the
fun.
mic.
Yes.
I
Drop
can't
the
think of
mic.
anything in my life where I have influence and power that I'm not sharing with others. And that's
Well, you're Ronnie's.
that's where I'm struggling with it. Like what influence, I guess, well, my grandkids and stuff, but I share that, of course, with their parents and the other grandparents.
Well, but this is the problem, is that you can only generalize so much without running into tons of exceptions.
Yeah.
Ron Eastwood being the example of the perfect Christian boomer.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Woo!
I just do
Now,
what I can.
Jennifer brings up, I have a question. So she says, the passing of the Thanksgiving meal responsibility is huge. My mom is from the generation before the boomer and only passed it when she couldn't do it anymore. Some of the attitude I see, and I'm not even going to get specific with it, I was going to say with a culture.
We know
but
you're talking about
with-
boomers. Go ahead.
No, with boomers, yeah, overall, is it has to be done a certain way. So it's almost like no pushover, y'all don't know. It's almost like that wife-husband kind of thing. And so
Sometimes, yeah.
somebody says, but pass the torch, the next person needs to have a torch. No, somebody said, no, Jennifer says, but you can't expect the new torch holder to run with it the same way you did.
Yeah.
Could it be a little bit of that? Could it be an issue with they want it done the way, the right way, or the way they did it?
But I think that's something that I see with my mom is she gave Easter over to me. You know,
Ooh,
like just
okay.
a holiday
Wow.
saying like, you want to do it? Because I was like, I want to like take a holiday and own it for the family. And so she's like, that's fine. Then you're going to do it. We're going
Yeah.
to do it together. But I get to learn because we do it as like a team, because she's there with me teaching me like certain things that we're going to do. But it does look different.
No, I think that's a good example of it. That's what it can look like.
Yeah.
Don't wait till it's dried from your cold, dead hands.
I know. And then you have no
It's
idea.
true. You see that
No
literally.
idea.
You see that. You see that in churches and in the home too, but I see that in churches.
I just love that our experiment's been proven true. Like without anyone giving an answer, we're getting an answer. Because if you can't answer that, there's a problem.
Yeah, I'm interested because I don't see it, but I'm in that generation, and I'm like, maybe I'm just blind to it.
You
because
see
I
pastors
hear it on
growing
tons of
old.
podcasts, people saying, "Oh, well, we're Xers or millennials, and we want to have some influence, and you're not giving it to us." And
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, well, my pastor, he's younger, so
Oh.
he's already a millennial, and he's very open about sharing. So
Sharing the info.
But okay,
Yeah,
so you're hearing this.
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah.
You're hearing this message time and again. So either all of us are idiots, or
Well,
there's some truth there.
You're millennials and Xers. I mean,
But if you're hearing this consistently, couldn't there be some kernel of truth in it?
there has to be, yeah, or most likely is. It's
So why
just
can't
I
we
don't
find
see
it?
it. I don't know.
Isn't that interesting? I think it's very interesting. I think it'd be a fun exercise to get a group of boomers together and have them try to crack this code, figure out what are those weaknesses among your age demographic that are holding you back and holding others back. And because I can't wait to see what you become once you find it.
Yeah, and what is the influence that we're holding back from you?
There's some good comments,
What?
though. So Jane says, I would love to pass it on. No one wants to step up. They're too busy with kids doing 1,000 activities, Xers, and their
Yeah.
budget is too tight. Just take it over and tell me when to be there.
Hey, you know what? How about you
That's
pay for it?
the truth.
You got all the money, you
Our
pay for it.
generation is like taking our kids everywhere. Hello. I'm gonna own that.
Well, hold up, though.
Mike
You got
has-
the money, you can pay for it. We'll show up.
Mike says,
Gee.
look at this. This is awesome. I was at a session with business and community leaders in their 50s. lamenting when were they going to get the chance to really lead in the community. They realized that the leaders from 65 to 75 years old still running churches, businesses, politics,
Really?
because they're physically active, mentally sharp, and don't see retirement at 62 and joining the rocking chair set as desirable.
Huh.
That's an interesting perspective. Doug, he has some love. What's up, Doug?
And he just liked our page.
Yeah! Woo!
That's how you do it. Like the page.
He says, I listen every workday morning at my commute. I love your show. I've been listening for close to 2 years. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Doug.
I identify with Brian a lot. Being a musician myself, I love listening to music, so getting me to listen to a talk show as opposed to music is an accomplishment.
And stop there. That's enough.
I love how Janelle I love how Janelle keeps Brian in check.
That's right.
And Ron
LOL. We know what that means.
Ron is an outstanding asset. His comments are usually poignant and real world common sense.
Thank
True.
you.
Ira,
True.
boomers don't want to pass the torch from their dead cold hands. Boomers are selfish at times. My mother, when I was young, would not let us learn to drive on her car. It took me years to learn to drive by doing it myself without her help. There were times living boomers were very mean at times.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
So we've got someone saying they're selfish and mean.
Aww.
Yeah.
Sorry. I didn't say it.
Boomers need to feel like they're still, yes, Linda. Boomers need to feel like they're still relevant and not that younger generations don't need us any longer. But that's the thing. We're not saying sit down.
Yeah.
Like I've heard, and I don't necessarily agree, but somebody was talking about Biden and that comment that he said when he said, I'm not letting go of the torch. And they were like, well, how about you can be a mentor or like share from the years of experience that you have, or like what's that called? Not a counselor,
Advisor.
What? Advisor, or so that's in the church that can happen. It's not sit down, right? It's just shift in terms of position. And Jane says, Brian paying for it. You're paying for it as part of the passing. Is that what she's saying?
Oh, yeah.
Passing
If
of
you're
the
going to
torch.
take the leadership, you're going to take the cost too.
Listen, Jane, I just talk. I am personally and professionally all talking. No, somebody else leading. I just talk.
Jennifer says, no, you pay, we prepare.
I wonder, like I'm trying to think of pastors, and in my sphere of knowledge, I don't know any old pastors hanging on. So I think about like the radio pastors, and Chuck Swindoll used to be the young guy on the radio. He's still on the radio, and he's 75 by now, maybe pushing 80. John MacArthur, the same. A lot of the same preachers are still on the air, and I don't know if that's part of the hanging on. We get a few, like Chip Ingram is a newer, but even he's probably 50. So, and we had David Platt for a little while, but then a change in his position made it that he didn't have time to keep up his radio broadcast.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we see some evidence of it changing, but I still find it absolutely compelling that we have yet to have one boomer on this comment stream
So the
say
challenge,
anything of that, because honestly, greatest generation, if we go back before you guys, greatest generation really was one of the greatest generations of all time. They rescued the world from Nazism and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And yet, wouldn't boomers say that the greatest generation wasn't as emotionally connected to their children as they could have been?
Okay.
Right? I've heard
see
this
that,
before.
yeah.
Because your generation was much more emotionally connected. They reacted and they said, you guys didn't do that as well, so we're going to do that well. We're all pointing at Xers and millennials saying what they need to do better. We're still waiting for you boomers.
But the
What did you do poorly?
The greatest generation, I don't think they said, oh, we were emotionally stoic and didn't connect to our kids.
I'm not certain they
It was-
disagree with that now, though.
Yeah, maybe not. But, it's kind of like we looked up at them and made the change, and now you're looking up at us and making the change.
But you see how bad it looks to have every other generation willing to do it? I think this is why they get frustrated with boomers.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody else at the party seems willing to go, hey, everybody, let's go share one of our faults. And you guys go, I don't have any. So
So obviously, we're not
We
going to
don't.
satisfy Brian today. So the challenge today, as we wrap up, is share the video and ask your boomer friends what are some things that that the boomer generation has to work on,
Yeah.
and then
it's gotta be there.
report back to us and tell us what was said.
and honestly, if you can't find one, it's really troubling.
Yeah.
Love you guys, but wow.
Bye. Bye.
See you tomorrow.
See you later, alligator.
Brian. Oh, man.